All right, so welcome to our guests who are seeing this later, and I'll give a little intro of myself. Mark Tabladillo. I often go by Mark Tab, which is what's on my screen. I had a company that I started called Mark Tab, and that was before I was at my. So let's talk about Ratio Christi, and then I want to go back and talk to everybody because I have a little something for you, just based on backgrounds. Um, I have been involved for like 6 years with Ratio Christi. At the time, I was teaching. So I have a doctorate from Georgia Tech, and my doctorate's in industrial engineering. And so I was teaching at University of Phoenix. So at the time, I helped start a chapter there. We had some meetings, and then my student graduated, and we never really got going again. So then I segued into being what's now called Area Ministry Director for Georgia. We have several campuses. We've done a few things, and I'll talk about that in a bit. But I want to talk about my professional background on this topic, AI. So I work for Microsoft, and I'm a data scientist. I've been at Microsoft for 4 years, and I've had like 8 managers. Just, people just move around. I've actually only moved positions once, but there's always change in my type of organization. Seems like we're always training, but I normally work from home, travel to clients. I know Frito-Lay. Okay, so one of our recent customers was Pepsi, and we were studying their distribution of chips from distribution centers to where they were going. So I was working with Pepsi and their data scientists from India, and we were tracking or coming up with a model for how they were working with that. So Pepsi has been a major customer for Microsoft, and of course we had a lot of people working on that project. So that's my touch point there. Okay, Isaac, I see your books, and probably that's only a fraction. I have gotten to know the Craigs over the last 10 years because I'm in Atlanta. And so I guess I'm so fortunate, right, to drop in at Johnson Ferry Baptist, where he teaches his Defenders class. And he does a systematic theology. And you can see the whole thing online. I guess some people even done transcriptions. You may even hear my voice sometimes. In the early days, he would get confused in my name. And I think sometimes he would call me Marcus, or he would call me Mark. And sometimes I'd correct him. And then later on, who cares, right? I'm surprised he even knows me. But he's got a remarkable memory, even for the roughly 100 people that would attend the class in person. So I know you like his teaching. Have you ever gotten a chance to see him speak in person?
Yeah, I've actually got to meet him 3 different times at different conferences and stuff. So he's a swell guy, just as nice in person as he seems on recordings.
And I know you had David Wood. Did you see David Wood's impression of William Lane Craig?
I have. Yes.
That was very good.
I agree.
So yeah, he's a great guy. I guess I will tell one William Lane Craig story. So I've only had one private meeting with him. It was after a Sunday class, and I had lunch with him and his wife, just the 3 of us. We went to a Chinese restaurant, and we talked about a number of things, but I'm going to tell you one story. At the time, he was still early on Facebook, and Reasonable Faith had just started its presence on Facebook. And what he was concerned about, he was just asking me, not concerned, but he was just curious of why Richard Dawkins had so much popularity on Facebook. And I told him, because I was running my business at the time, and I was spending money on marketing, and I was getting more likes. And we looked, and I had more likes on my business webpage than he did for Reasonable Faith. Now that's just completely embarrassing, because nobody knows who I am. I've never written a book. I mean, seriously. So what I told him is, I will work with your team, and we'll get into this marketing thing, and then you can take off. Well, of course it's taken off. And, you see now in Reasonable Faith, like he just posts something, and within like 2 hours, hundreds of people will see it because he's got such a large following today. But that was, kind of my part early on, just seeing how he's really pivoted online and really found a really good niche there on Facebook. So it's really worked out well for him. Um, and then, let's talk about, and I know, Ben, you said you're studying video. I'm going to talk a little bit about video and AI, but let me do another round robin, and John, I'll give you a chance to go last. But Isaac, what are some of the ideas you have about AI, or topics or interests, or what do you think some of the interesting sides of this topic are?
Well, for me, the only time I've done much study into AI, I'm not a huge computer or technology person, but I do know when I was studying the doctrine of the soul, one of the things that comes up a lot is something like the soul necessary for rationality, consciousness, a truly um, self-conscious awareness and being. And so you have a lot of, even though John Searle himself would not jump on board with some of the things that people have done with his Chinese room argument, I do know some Christian apologists who will take something like the Chinese room argument and kind of show that strong AI is not going to get you anything more than maybe something that can pass the Turing test, but you're not going to get a truly thinking self-conscious individual by just increasing processing power, or something like that. So I've run across the kind of AI arguments as they intersect with some of those discussions on the soul. But like I said, from where I don't have a strong technology background, I don't know that I can say I have fully latched on to everything there, or whether I can even have a solid opinion on some of those arguments. But that's where I've heard it.
What's your, okay, so, and we'll come back to yours. I'm going to write these down as I go around, get the soul. And then Chris, what are some of your thoughts about AI? Anything?
Honestly, it's, I hate to say it's the same, just the idea of being able to create consciousness in a machine, and a machine, quote unquote, being able to learn, having the ability to learn. And I know there's even talk of some people talking about like some more advanced robots. There's conversations of like, at what point do we give robots like rights, like human rights, and ethical questions like that. Just off the top of the head, that's kind of would be my thoughts or questions concerning that.
So rights. The question is, what is a right? How about Ben? You're in video. What do you think?
I think probably most of my thoughts on it would, I would need a good definition of consciousness, because I think that's probably one of the main questions about intelligence, is if it requires consciousness. In my very, not even a layman's, I'm not very familiar with coding or anything, but I understand technology to be pretty deterministic. And so that makes me wonder if you could truly say that anything that's software based could ever be considered conscious if it's based on a deterministic set of code or things like that. But I haven't gone too far into the subject. I'm familiar with like the Chinese room argument and things like that, but it's just been like an occasional fascination here and there.
Okay. John, do you have any ideas on AI? Anything that interests you?
None whatsoever.
None. Okay.
They and I'm just being straight up honest. They mentioned it. I knew what it was, and that was the extent of it. So I'm here to learn.
Okay. Let me go to, I'm going to do a little show and tell, and then I'm going to come back to some of these topics. My presentation was, it's called Christian Worldview on AI, and I will show you some of it. What I did was I went out to different Facebook groups. Some of them are believers, some of them are not. And I just asked people, what do you think about the Christian worldview on AI? And then I just got responses, put them together, grouped the questions, and then came up with a talk. And that's what this talk is. Some of the people had the same types of ideas, but let me do a little bit of definition of what industry thinks AI is. So let me share my screen. I'm going to share screen 2 here. Hopefully you'll be able to see that. Tell me if it's coming up.
Yeah, we can see that.
Okay. So let me turn on my bubble. I have a bubble. It shows you where we are. So we got two people talking on the balcony there. Is your company AI ready? Most of what I'm seeing now and some of the products or projects that I'm working on, as far as Microsoft and the big dollar products, are all around search, which would make sense because, I think the number 1 and 2 website right now are Google and YouTube. And so Google's completely built around search. YouTube is closely behind it. And if you go to YouTube, you don't even have to log on, and it's already giving you recommendations. And then if you do log on, then it's beginning to filter things and point you to things that they think you want to see. So that is kind of the idea, is customizing and tailoring media experiences. This goes along with, Ben, you're a video major, and some of our technologies have to do with that. But in Microsoft's vision, what I like about what Microsoft's doing is casting a vision that's a bit wider about helping society. And I think that that approach is why, even in recent times, I think with this whole election story, certain CEOs got called to Congress. I think Twitter, Google, and Facebook. But Microsoft was not on that list. Microsoft is big tech, and also Amazon. But Microsoft does not get involved in those types of things, which for me as a Christian, I think that's good. Now, inside Microsoft, as you might expect, and I think is even true, we have a variety of worldviews. We have people who are not Christians. We have people who are atheists and have other worldviews. But then we look at our customers, with Microsoft's footprint being around the world, there certainly is the desire to have the same types of diversity in our workforce that we have with our customers, right? So that kind of goes together. And so some of the ideas here, I was looking at some of the projects that we're now promoting on our AI page. One here on the left, this is called Microsoft Premonition. That's kind of a spooky word to me, premonition, but it's the name of a product. But this is using AI to map and predict epidemics. So what they're thinking about in terms of Microsoft research is, would it be possible to use AI to track small living creatures? And we talk about small, it could be the size of bacteria. And they went through, and I watched this video earlier today because I had not seen this one, but they were introducing a way to think through, what would you need to be able to track small microorganisms? All right, this second one here, Lobe, this is like a app that works on your phone. There's a technique in deep learning called transfer learning. And you can see here, it's kind of taking a picture of these berries. Well, the way it works is, this is a image detection type technology. So you would take pictures of what you're trying to identify. And then what you're doing by taking those pictures, you're training the engine to understand, what these objects are. Of course, you're going to have to tag them. Tagging and taking pictures and tagging is actually expensive. Now, you might think, oh, it's not expensive to take a picture on the phone. Oh, it is if you want to have reliable results and you have to, take maybe hundreds or thousands of photos or something to be able to use that. Where do we see this in products? I saw it with an insurance company where they're allowing people to take pictures of damage to their car. And instead of having an adjuster come and see a person, if they're satisfied, if the insurance company is satisfied with the photos that someone sends in, then they don't have to send an adjuster to go see a vehicle. And I don't know if you've ever had to file an insurance claim, but that's something that can be used to perhaps save time. Another one where I know this is being used, we had several companies come to Microsoft and saying, we use drones to take pictures of commercial buildings because they have to do inspections for things like leaks. So is there a way they can accelerate that process? Because they have hundreds and thousands of these photographs from commercial buildings, and they need a way to be able to detect issues that might require maintenance. So that's a real world application. Naturally, we think of a commercial building, could be anything from a mall to a high-rise complex, to a large condominium building. So something like that, would benefit from this technology. Third one here, inclusive AI is something that Microsoft tries to do. This is a whole story of how Microsoft's using its vision technology to work with people who have disabilities. So people who are blind are able to use this vision technology to have the camera give them an audio of what it sees. So that is something that can help people who are disabled. And of course, this is an example of being able to do something that was not possible or even cost effective a number of years ago. And then here, this one here, Breakthrough AI describes images as well as people do. So what is often the standard is they will run these tests and they'll get some volunteers, they'll show them photographs, and they'll say, what do you see in this picture? And we have a picture here of a baseball player catching a ball. So they ask people, what do you see about this picture, that picture? They do this for like thousands of pictures. And of course, people will also make mistakes because there will be things like certain types of plants or fruits or animals, and people won't know what that is. So they will make a mistake. And compared to what people can do, and the error rate for people is not really that high. Usually for things like that, something around 3% maybe. The goal is for the AI, though, to do as well as people do. And now AI is pretty much broken every record. Speech to text, text to speech, image detection, object detection inside images, and a lot of other tasks. So, and that really has happened in the last, say, 7 years. And it's all really due to a technology called deep learning. It's an application of neural networks. And mathematically, it's very similar to how people think the brain works. I'm not going to get into what that whole math side is because we want to get into what consciousness is. But these are the types of things that are connected together. Now, in the beginning, I said, where's Microsoft making money? It's really on search. So Microsoft makes developer tools for people to put these capabilities into their applications. What type of applications? The things that we use on our mobile phones, or maybe it's on a laptop or on a tablet, and games. And of course, Xbox is big. We still got a lot of people who are interested in Minecraft. I happen to be in a Chick-fil-A, and I was wearing my Microsoft shirt, and there was a family there, 2 boys, and the older one was probably around 11, the other one's on about 7, and they were whispering and they were looking at me. And then they go, you were from Microsoft? And I said, yes. And then they started asking me questions about Xbox and Minecraft and that type of thing. But that's their whole context, of what they know. And those type of interactive experiences are really where Microsoft is beginning to make market impact. When I said search, okay, go back to the first one. This is being able to search engine to find maybe bacteria. Maybe that's going to be possible. Maybe it'd be possible for us to have devices that are able to track bacteria and viruses and that type of thing. Here, search, what kind of search? Searching for berries. Like I said, in a database that has images, not something that would be interesting for a lot of people, but for certain types of applications like farming, that's very important. Here, search what? You're searching your environment, and you're searching that blind person is able to point maybe 1 or more cameras around their environment and then be able to see, quote unquote, what is around them. And then this last one here about images, this is about being able to identify things as well as people can do it. So this is where, right now, a lot of ideas are yet to be born in this area. There's a lot of entrepreneurial activity involved in AI. A lot of you may know Elon Musk is involved with pretty much everything he touches is AI, from SpaceX to Tesla's to his interest in, they call it the Boring Company, where they're going to want to do underground transportation. Everything he's interested in is connecting all that to the web. And one thing that I know, I've talked to people about AI, there's a bit of a misperception sometimes in science fiction, because when they think about AI, they think about some sort of robot. And I think that's the way you see it in Marvel, you know, in the stories. But I always give them this example. There's a company in Atlanta, and I can tell this story because it's publicly known. It's called Acuity Brand Lighting. They are in the lighting business. They make fluorescent bulbs. And, you know, they change bulbs in major stores. One of their major customers is Target. So they changed all the bulbs in Target. And it was about, you know, it was a number of years ago, they decided they were going to be in the high-tech business. So what they're doing now is those bulbs have sensors in them, and they're able to track where the RFID chips are in the shopping carts. So when you pull a shopping cart out and you're walking around Target, they're tracking, you know, where that shopping cart is. And it would seem like a natural place to put some sort of sensor would be in the lights. And, you know, I know a lot of us have been in stores where you've seen those little black domes, and, you know, those are security cameras. And perhaps malls have the most security cameras of all. Sometimes they're obvious, sometimes they're not so obvious. But who would think that the sensors would be in the light? They could be anywhere that, you know, you could have power or have something battery operated. A lot of companies now are connecting things to the web. I tend to be a low connection type person, and especially because I've been hacked. I mean, I haven't been personally hacked, but, well, actually, my home server, I know, was attempted to be hacked. And yes, it was from both Russia and China. I traced back the IP addresses. There's always these robots out there that are looking for servers that are vulnerable. But my data's been lost, and you know, Home Depot lost my data, Target, Equifax, US government. How do I know? Because they all sent me letters or noticed that my data was compromised. And I tend, you know, I like being on social media, but I also like to put out there what I want to put out there, and I tend to not want to put, you know, a lot of information out on the web. Okay, so now let's pivot into some of these other topics here about consciousness. And I'm going to give you my viewpoint, and then we'll go from there. Let's start, though, with my deck. I'll show you my deck. Oh, yeah. I don't know if that was it. Here it is. Let's go to the deck. Let's play. Christian Worldview and Artificial Intelligence. Okay, my premise. AI has become increasingly important in technology and IT applications. So we do see it all around us. So in preparation for this talk, I asked people on Facebook what questions they have about AI. The groups range from industry groups to apologetics forums and my personal timeline. So my questions reflect those. And let's start with this one. How does my experience inform an approach to AI? So I think because I've seen what big tech is doing with AI, I'm thinking more about technology as it's being delivered right now. Some of the questions people have, and some of the questions that we're talking about tonight, consciousness, that has to do with the thinking through what's possible. Now, I used to believe that science fiction needed science, but I was wrong. Science needs science fiction. And why? Because in the scientific method, you have to have a hypothesis first that's tested. And I guess some of you have been graduate students, or even if you're undergraduate and you've done a science experiment, you have to have an idea first that gets tested before it's answered. Now, this goes straight to William Lane Craig, because what I like about his talk, he does talk about abstract objects. And I know when he first talked about that subject, I was wondering, what is he talking about? Because they're like platonic objects. So the question is this: do platonic objects exist on their own, or do you need a consciousness like God to be able to host those? I would argue that there is a strong Christian argument toward why something like the number 2 for it to exist and have rational form, needs to be housed in God. I'm going to pause right there, see if anybody has a comment on that, about abstract objects. But that is where I'm coming from on abstract objects. So so let me go again. Let me go here the next one. So this is what one of the questions I got. So someone said, so a talk on AI Christianity, and they literally wrote crickets. Why would a Christian have a specific worldview on AI? And I'll tell you why. There are different words that we use even coming into this. All right, if you use the word artificial, then we also have to describe what is natural. If you want to describe what is natural, philosophers have something to say about that. For example, natural law. If natural law has a definition, the question is, in nature, what does nature mean even to a Christian? These are words that are important and even beginning to go into what is important, I think, to talk about on this topic. So what is nature? And from a Christian worldview, I come from the perspective of design. So when I think about DNA, and I know biology major, we think about DNA, and a living creature is going to have a certain nature. That nature is kind of written into their DNA of how they would respond. So we talk about artificial. Okay, what does that mean? Is it completely artificial? I don't know. It's artificial in the sense that it's not coming from a specific DNA. That is the way I would define artificial. But is artificial intelligence artificial in the sense that it's not built on anything natural? I think that's too strong of a claim. I think you'd have to still make the argument that for it to have a coherent form, it would have to be almost communal. I mean, even communal might even be a fair term. I'd have to think through that. But the second word, intelligence. So I'm going to give you all a chance to give me your ideas. There's no right or wrong answer, but how would you all define what is intelligence? Any ideas?
I know who is it that we had a couple weeks ago? Tim Stratton, who was talking about free will. He was talking about how knowledge is justified rational belief. Maybe intelligence is tied to that, where it's not just, I don't know, like say a calculator that can continually arrive at the same, at a true answer, but a true justified answer, because the calculator's not, maybe that's presupposing it's not self-aware. I'm not sure, but.
I like the word justified. And being in college, they're trying to figure out, do you understand a subject? But they're going to have a standard.
Say again?
Being in college, they're going to have a certain standard that they're going to judge whether you know a subject. I mean, anyone who takes the course, instructor is going to have in mind something that just, are you smart about a certain topic? Mm-hmm. Or do you need training to be intelligent? So I'm just going to bring these up as questions. I'm not going to fully define, the answers, but so going back to this question here, why would a Christian have a specific view? God is creator of intelligence and also the maximum possible intelligence. That's what I would claim. So here's my claim about AI. Even if we wanted to build some sort of Tower of Babylon AI, and we got all human beings involved in training this AI, and even if we were able to motivate things like cats and dogs and fish to contribute to this AI, put it all together, it still could not be greater than God. Impossible. And I still go where I would come from, and this is where people wonder, what are the boundaries of AI? So I'm just going to go straight to what I think about God. Omnipresent, omnipotent, and omniscient. Now, and I was talking to someone this week. There's a woman that contacted me. She's doing a doctoral degree at SES. And it looks like I may be on her committee, but she wants to research AI. And we were talking about it this week. And so what I was telling her, one of the things that worry people about AI, okay, it might not be omnipresent, but it's more present than I am as a person. Why? Because I can go on some sort of network, like the thing I described, the Target stores or any type of cameras, and it can see more things than I can see personally. It's more powerful than I am as a person, and it knows more things than I do individually. So for that reason, people are concerned about that. You know, that amount of power being available is of concern. So there are some ethics things that are interesting on this topic. I mentioned earlier, Microsoft has a viewpoint on morality, and Christians have a viewpoint on morality. In case of Microsoft, there is a idea called AI for good. There's 3 areas, and I think there's a 4th area. I'm going to write it down here so I make sure I mention it. First one is AI for Earth, where Microsoft's trying to do things like monitoring forests and agriculture. The second one is accessibility, so that's like disabilities. The third one's humanitarian action, and this is area like human rights. And the 4th one is cultural preservation. And now I find that last one interesting because for years, there's been this effort to translate the Bible into all the world's languages. I think we have technology that'll greatly accelerate that process. So I see no reason why that project cannot be finished very soon, because there's something in the number of, we don't actually know well, I don't know that the number has been completely said, but I think it's less than 20,000. And Wycliffe is among the Bible translators, is trying to publish the Bible in every possible language. And AI can be used as a tool for cultural preservation. Sometimes some of these cultures that missionaries will encounter, they don't even have a written language. And so the first thing the missionaries will have to do is create a written language so that you could create a written Bible, right? But anything from text to speech to art could be a way that AI could be used to preserve cultures. So those are some of the ideas that Microsoft's promoting in terms of AI for good. You know, try to focus on the good things perhaps that AI could do. Any ideas on that? Comments? Okay, let's see. So let me skip through some of these. Let me go forward here. Okay, what are the bases that societies could be built upon? I'm going to show it's just a piece of paper, but it's got the name of 2 books. Okay, so I was, again, online with this woman who wants to do a doctorate, and we went to, let me just show you. Let's go there. So I told her, you know, go to KD Nuggets. And she goes, what's that? So let me get the screen to open up here. Just give you an idea of what people are talking about right now. There's this website called KD Nuggets. Now, it was probably designed 20 years ago. So when you look at this, the web design of this site is nothing spectacular. The web. However, the information inside it is definitely up to date, and this is one of the most popular websites in the area of AI and data science. But I went here on KD Nuggets, and I went to AI, and I just read earlier this week what some of the top stories are. So let's look at what people are looking at. There's 5 posts here, and I see they haven't changed since I looked at it the other day. First one here, overcoming the racial bias in AI. So that talks about areas of bias and ethics. The second one here, explaining the explainable AI 2-stage approach. So this one has to do with the mathematical side, but the explainability of AI is important in terms of the modeling. And if you think explaining models is not important, if you just look at the polling data that came out of this recent US election cycle, there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. And I don't think it's all because these polling organizations are intentionally deciding to be biased, because they get customers and they have people to pay for their polling data, namely politicians and campaigns, because their information is accurate. So being able to explain how a model comes up with a solution is, a big topic. Third one here, this one's just introduction to AI, what is it? What does it do? Fourth one, can AI learn human values? Okay, that's a great topic. Bias and ethics, that's from October 27th. And then fifth one here, the ethics of AI. And this is a marketing scientist, and asked Dr. Anna Farzinder of University of Southern California about the ethics of AI. So when it comes to what people are thinking about in terms of AI, I want to give, what is it that you see even in industry that people are asking as topics. So when people come to me and say, well, why should Christians have a viewpoint on AI, is for all these reasons. There's topics here about explaining it. There's topics about ethics. And, these are relevant to what people are talking about. Okay, so, I didn't describe my books. I'm going to recommend 2 books. And I know you might not be able to see it, but this is going to be the first book. It's called Moral Choices. This one's 4th edition. And this is by Scott B. Ray. So I got this book in preparation for this talk. One thing I like about these 2 books, they're relatively new, and they are good overall on ethics. Why did I want to look at ethics? Because of all what we just saw here from the recent stories. If you're going to think about AI, my recommendation is to have a perspective on ethics. And I like this book, but I also like this other book. It's called Christian Ethics, and it's called 4 Views. So it's got 4 viewpoints, edited by Steve Wilkins, and it's a comparison of 4 different viewpoints on ethics. And let me summarize what this book is. First of all, this book dismisses 4 non-Christian frameworks. The first framework is utilitarianism, which is, how useful is something, and that's not a Christian worldview. That is a major force, though, the way people think about ethics. Kantian ethics is pure rationality. Emotivist, positivist, it's got ethics in religious language, but it's nonsensical. And fourth one, moral relativism, and that's at odds with divine nature. But the 4 that are covered in this book are virtue ethics, natural law, divine command theory, and prophetic ethics. And I'm not going to describe all of them right now because it's not an ethics talk, but I'm going to tell you where I landed, where I think, me personally, the one that I resounded the most with was virtue ethics, because the focus there is on molding people. So if you ask what is an ethical decision, I would come back to this is the big question too. What is a person? So to be able to do a really good job in AI, and I know some of you talked about the soul, first requires for us to talk about what does it mean to be human? And that is a very important question in our society today, because people can't decide what is a marriage, they can't decide what is a gender, and they can't decide what is a baby, okay? So in context, if the definition of humanity from the humanities is under assault, and a lot of people believe a lot of these are social constructs, then when it comes to something like AI, they're going to take that same type of approach. They're not going to necessarily be rooted in some sort of viewpoint that's going to preserve humanity, especially going back to utilitarianism. I just need to get what I want, no matter what it takes. And that's going to be my output or thinking as I'm designing some sort of AI system. These are the areas that are going to intersect with our laws. Microsoft has joined Amazon and many other companies. For example, we have technology that will do face recognition. And Microsoft has decided to limit how that technology is being made available, especially in cases of law enforcement. And the reason is because Microsoft wants to know that there's a clear legally justified reason for why someone would use technology we have. But not only Microsoft, Amazon's done it, and now it seems to be a consensus that facial recognition could be an area of intense scrutiny, especially because it's not perfect. But guess what? People are not perfect too. You have people who see a crime and they're called a witness in front of a court and they describe what they saw. It depends what they saw, when they saw it, and they tried, people always trying to give the best testimony they can. And there's even a problem with people even identifying things that are in a photograph. So AI would have the same problem. And this is going to be a topic that we're going to be probably seeing more often, how AI is being used to perhaps identify individuals. Okay, let me go to the next one here. I got this one. Can AI become a god? Well, let's see. Oh, I lost my place. I gotta go forward. Can AI become a god? I'm going to answer no for the reason I just said. And, you have to be omniscient, omnipotent, and omnipresent. You know what comes close, though? I was talking about this week, totally unrelated, but I was telling people I don't believe in karma. And then I was telling somebody, karma, if karma existed, karma would have to be omnipresent, omnipotent, and omniscient, because karma not only needs to see the natural world like a scientist would see it, but it would also have to be able to read your mind and go into that. So it's hard for me to think about karma being real, without and this goes back to that abstract object thing. It's hard for me to go down that path. So so that's why I don't believe. So there's two ways to look at this. Can AI become God literally? No. Can AI become someone's God? I would think the answer is yes. And just as anything could be an idol, okay, AI can become an idol for some group, some organization. They could use some aspect of this, and that would be where they would go with it. Okay, this is about food. I'm going to skip that one. So we're going to go to this one on rights. I think, Ben, you were the one that talked about this. There was a decision by the nation of Saudi Arabia. They granted citizenship to an AI robot called Sophia. I think it was a marketing stunt. And the robot itself, as I learned later, was modeled after the actress Audrey Hepburn. Now I looked at the picture again and I said, well, I guess I can kind of see that the Sophia looks like Audrey Hepburn. But the question is here, if AIs develop a sense of free will, would they be entitled to rights? And I think recently too, I asked the same question. If AI could be conscious, would it be ethical to not make it conscious? That was what my question was. That's a little bit of a different type of question. But here's where I come to, and I don't think I said this yet, about counterfactual realities. So one thing I believe about people, this is my argument. A human being to be able to plan, going back to that science fiction. Remember I said science needs science fiction. One ability that people have is not just the ability to sense the environment around us, but also an imagination. And not only that, but we also have a means of communication. Okay? Communicate with each other and in our minds, imagine something that doesn't exist. I feel like that's a critical part to being conscious. Does anyone else have a comment on that? About imagination being a requirement, or also a distinguishing thing between Homo sapiens and other animals? Well, let me talk a little bit more about this rights. Okay, this is 2017, and this was the European Parliament has urged drafting of a set of regulations that govern and use the creation of robots and artificial intelligence, including a form of, quote, electronic personhood to ensure rights and responsibilities for the most capable AI. The proposed legal status for robots would be analogous to corporate personhood. And for those of you who may know, corporations such as the one that I had started for running my business, by law, and this is pretty common around the world, it's considered like a person. The corporation is considered like a person, someone that has a business, then they would be treated, quote unquote, like a person by the courts. So I think that's going to be an area of emerging discussion. So the question would be, if there's some sort of AI, who would be responsible for that technology should something go wrong? And at least from Microsoft's perspective, what's turned out to be true is our chief legal counsel, his name is Brad Smith. He was early on involved in how Microsoft was communicating what we were going to do with AI. And I think that speaks to how big tech is thinking about this topic. They're thinking about it through the lens of legal. Laws vary across the world. So for Microsoft to be able to operate a business that has AI, we also have to have a legal viewpoint. I'm not a lawyer, so I don't have, a lot of viewpoint or interest in that topic. However, I think this question of rights is important as far as a legal question. Not just an individual working with AI, but also how would a community consider it? So those are some new ideas. Okay, is the AI an agent? If so, does it bring about agent causation, or is it merely bringing about event causation? And I think, Ben, you were the one saying this here earlier about deterministic programming. So I agree it is deterministic, but here's the trick. You can, and I was recently building a little bot. We have this thing called Bot Framework Composer. It lets you build a chat bot, and it has an experience. So what happens is when you walk into the bot, you can have it say, hello, how are you doing today? For example, you literally type in that and that's the phrase it will use. But also it does something called language generation. So what you could do is you could type in like 7 different phrases. How are you doing today? What's your day been like? So what will happen is it'll seem more conversational because it's going to randomly go through all the phrases that you give it. So yes, on one side it is deterministic, but on the other side, it can be programmed in a way that makes it seem like it's not deterministic. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. So where has this been used? And I know I saw your keyboard. If we were in the same room, I would play for you some of the music that has been generated by AI. Now, some of it sounds terrible, okay? I'm just telling you right now, just like when you give a child an instrument and say, go play it. Well, the child's obviously very knowledgeable, but they don't know how to make music. And the same thing with AI, it doesn't know how to make music. How do they train the AI? By programming it with music. So they give it music and then they have it generate music. They give it art and then they have it generate art. And there's such a thing as, and I don't have any examples to show now, but if you look to, if you type in AI generated art or AI generated music, you can see where some of this is being used. There's also another technology I saw. There's an AI generating writer. So it will write text. So that one, you train it with a certain corpus of information, and then it comes back with generated text which is kind of a combination of what it saw in terms of patterns of what it read, and now it's going to read something like how it was trained. So these are some of the things that, while it is deterministic, it's made to seem like maybe it's not. And I think for a lot of these experiences, we actually know, that might not be programmed, to, come out a certain way, but we're at the point now, because it uses probabilistic inference, that no one is specifically programming it a certain way, but it's kind of made to seem like it has a little bit more life than it does. There was this story, there's a computer conference. All right, this is a story about AI being an agent. There was this company that made this freestanding robot, and it was like a robot that would walk around the conference and, talk to people. Well, the makers of the robot, they pulled a stunt. So what they did is they knew there was a Tesla that was driving around, and so they drove the robot in front of the Tesla to see what would happen, and the Tesla killed the robot. So that got them in the news because it was funny, and they didn't care about throwing away the money for the thing, because Tesla is a big company, everybody knows who they are, and nobody knows who this other company is that made the freestanding robot. So you're going to have people doing things like that, just a little marketing stunt. Today, and this is true, somewhere between 70 and 84% of stock trades are automated. And a lot of them are done by computers. Now, they're triggered, for example, by individuals, but then when to place the trade is largely done through algorithms. And that is already something that's, happening behind the scenes. And we talked earlier about the thing with the chips. So yeah, I worked on that project, and we have some good models on top of known history to try to fill those orders. Okay, that's all I'm going to say about that one. Is being non-physical required for agency? Is being non-physical required for agency? My argument is yes. Why? Because I believe there's a soul, and I don't think that is possible without some sort of spirit. And there's some scriptural ideas behind that. And I'm noticing here from my notes, I put a number of scriptures in defense of the soul. And I know there's a number of people who have written more on this topic, but I think that is part of what makes it possible to have these counterfactual realities, is to be able to think and imagine and be able to come up with something that's not known, and then communicate and try to convince other people that to do something. Well, that is a lot to ask from a machine. Now, a machine can do certain things really well, but what I described is really difficult. I am going to again, I wish I could show this video. There's a video out of PBS Nova, and the name of the video is "Can We Build a Human Brain?" That's the name of it. In the beginning, they talk about this robot that's working in China. It's called Xiaoice, and it's become a cultural icon. So they have and this built by Microsoft. What they've discovered in China is that people will trust talking to this robot like they would talk to a friend. And they went out and they got video of people talking to the robot. Now, we have very similar robots here. Even on my iPhone, we have Siri. You could talk to Siri. You could talk to Cortana. I don't know that that's a very American thing to do, to talk to your robot about how your day was and, troubles that you had. But in China, they got a lot of people texting into their robot and getting responses back and forth. I don't know. It's a cultural thing. One of the guys that was interviewed for that, he said the reason he does that is because he can trust the robot, but he can't trust his friends, because his friends tell, but he just wants to have an experience of expressing what he wants to say. So he talks to the robot. Okay. And I think that kind of shows where, and I don't think that is a small number of people. I think there's a lot of people that think like that, like millions of people. So I think we're going to kind of see that. And you go back to this thing about the agency. It seems like the robot has agency, but at the time they made this science show, the robot already had 33 billion conversations. So it took all those conversations and it was using that to inform. So is it deterministic in that sense? Yes, but it would be hard to know because you couldn't even live long enough to hear the 33 billion conversations come back to you from that robot, if you see what I'm saying. It's the corpus is just so large. So the robot itself obviously had more conversations than a person will have in their lifetime. Okay, that is how much information, and I'm describing something that's already happening. So from an observer's perspective, for it to be able to give new information over a period of 100 years is almost a trivial problem at that point, because it just has so much information. Okay, what policies can Christians advocate for the development of public protection and ethics in the area of AI? I wrote two things down here. One is the definition of humans. One thing I feel like we need to stand up for and even talk about more as Christians is what is a human, for the reasons I was saying earlier. Is the human a unique species is going to be an important thing. And what is a human right? Because these are the areas where it's going to really talk into our daily experience. And the second area is the definition of what is responsibility. So some people think they're not responsible. And even right now, big tech in this recent election, they were arguing, oh, we're not responsible for sharing every, post or whatever. And the government is having a different perspective because they have certain legal protections that allow them to escape criminal prosecution just as being a service provider. Well, if they're going to be a service provider, they have to be a service provider from everyone, and they can't be filtering content. That's a current conversation in the United States about responsibility. What responsibility does a technology company have in terms of its AI? But it doesn't stop there. It also goes to the other types of devices that I talked about earlier, and all the different ways people can use them. Is this of interest? I think so. And I think it's beyond just the soul, and speaks even to what I was saying, that lawyers are very interested in this topic, how AI is being used. Isn't AI just us? I say no. But I will note something, and some of you already know this. There are some worldviews which are not Christianity that imply a unity of all things. Okay, those would be like, pantheism, or other, or polytheism. So understanding that means that different people coming from different worldviews are going to look at this question differently about what is AI, because they're going to see the interconnection of all things, and they're going to project what AI means. And AI, though, can only do what people program it to do. And so its existence is separate. And I think it is possible that that can be certainly controlled, but I don't think it's essentially us. And this is going to, again, go into areas, people have very broad thoughts about where their exact human life existence ends. And going back to a soul, I think this has to go back with Christian worldview, that individual souls have responsibility and not just, a sense of communal responsibility. So that was the end of my questions. So I think Isaac, you're talking about earlier about the soul. I think those are certainly core questions here. Chris was talking about consciousness, and my argument would be that I don't think AI can become conscious. And one of the difficulties is that AI is programmed to do one thing. It's not programmed to say no. And also, there would have to be some sort of ability to have a counterfactual reality introduced. And I'm not talking about a second program. I'm talking about being able to take things that it knows and be able to combine them. It does seem that if you look at some of the AI generated art and music and text, that it appears to be conscious or creative. Well, creative to me falls short of being conscious, and especially when it comes to making a moral choice. So I think that would be a difference I would look at. All right, so I'm going to pause right there, see if anyone has any thoughts. I think I may have addressed all the questions and hopefully maybe even brought in some new ideas.
Hey, Mark, I'm just curious. Have you by any chance seen, I think it's a documentary on Netflix that came out recently. I think it's called The Social Dilemma. Have you by any chance heard of that?
Can you summarize it?
Well, I mean, it's just basically a look right now into some of these big tech industries and how the AI works on things like Facebook and Instagram. And the whole point of the documentary is kind of, I guess it's a cautionary tale about what exactly is happening to us on social media, how we are kind of being sold out to the highest bidder, I guess is a way to put it, in terms of like the marketing and how the AI it literally is smart enough to, I guess it gets to where it knows you well enough to where it can push just the right buttons and push just the right things on your news feed to keep you in your social media as much as possible. And it also talks a little bit towards the end of the documentary about how some of this is even being used just to even influencing the outcome of certain social and political agendas in different countries. And it didn't specifically go into anything like voting stuff recently in this country, but it's I don't know, it's just kind of like I said, a cautionary tale of how AI is starting to function on social media. So obviously relevant to what we're talking about tonight.
I think it's really important because if you look at all the jobs that are made in the United States, for example, and not to leave out other nations, but just focusing on a developed economy, what is it that people really do for a living? And how much of that is really sales, marketing, and service and perception? And it doesn't matter. Even if you're working frontline and selling something like food, a lot of that has to do with how people perceive the presentation. So I think I like that you brought this up, social dilemma, and I think we're going to see more commentaries like this on social media and what impact it's having. And is anyone here a parent? Isaac, do you have kids? John, I don't know. I don't have children, but
not yet.
So that's also a question too with parents of how much they're going to let their kids be exposed to social media, because they're not just being exposed to individuals, but they're also being exposed to AI in the sense of giving their information and then what they get back from that. So that is a, concern. And yet everybody wants to do it because it's so attractive.
I think one of the things for me, like looking not just at this, but I think it's important for the church that we always make sure that we are, what's a good way to put it? you don't
informed.
want just people who are not educated in a certain field speaking
Right.
knowledgeable, trying to speak into an area that they don't know much about. And for me personally, I think that it's so obvious how much AI influences things like our social media time, how much we're on social media, what it's doing to us, even when we're not on social media. I think there's this weird intersection of psychology and AI that is going to affect how we disciple the next
Right.
generation of Christians. And so, if you're wanting to effectively disciple an over social mediaized world, I think that it's important that we have people who are in the know when it comes to AI, and that we have people in the church that are trained in psychology and even seeing how these things intersect, because you can't just pretend like, well, you got the Spirit and that's all you need. I mean, these are real factors in our world today that are affecting everyone from our oldest people in the church and way more down to the younger. And so I really do think, for what does it look like to follow Jesus in everyday life, I think it's important that we listen to experts on this topic. So I do enjoy the fact that we kind of dove into this tonight, and I'm glad that you were willing to kind of share some of this with us.
Thanks. John, you were going to say something?
Just at the beginning, you mentioned Minecraft, and my son lives on it.
Mm-hmm.
And my wife and I struggle with how much is too much, because he would stay on it as long as we allow him. He's there. That's his day. And I'm like, but, and I have no idea. I mean, I don't grasp the concept whatsoever. So, yeah, I appreciate the information. I mean,
Yeah, and video games, well, it's a game, so they're going to make it very engaging. And I think the goal of all developers, as I've talked to developers, is to get people to spend as much time as they can with their application. And whether it's Minecraft or an accounting application or a social media website, all the developers want to give the best presentation so that people spend time there. And money. Sometimes they want money more than time.
yeah, and well, you had mentioned between YouTube and I think Google maybe at the beginning also, he stays on YouTube, but he knows how to use Google as well. He's 8, and he can find anything, and we have to really keep an eye on what he's doing. He was watching something that had a character that was named Granny. I have no idea. But if Granny caught you, she chopped you up. It was really kind of bloody.
Yeah, I've seen that. It's like some horror game. I know what you're talking about.
He'd go in a room. It was similar, I thought, to Minecraft, but he'd go into a building or a room, and it was, people running from Granny or trying to kill Granny. Anyway, point being, I don't know how to approach these areas at all. So that's the reason, when they brought it up, I thought I was interested because of my children.
Yeah.
And the older ones, they're all girls, and they're not nowhere near. They're more into the TikTok.
Yeah.
And I had to eliminate that just because that guy used to be president. Was going to ban it, but still, I don't know. I have mixed feelings about all of it.
Yeah,
but I'm guilty of being on the Facebook, for hours.
Right. So since I'm not a parent, I don't try to pretend to give parents advice. My main thing is for parents to talk to each other about how do you approach this, especially if they're in the same age group. And because you have to do what's appropriate for their age. You can't be zero technology, because as we see during the shutdown, that is going to school now. They got to be able to use technology in this world going forward. And yet, on the other hand, too much can be too much. And, you know, it used to be that when I was growing up, sophisticated technology didn't start until I learned how to drive, because that was how long ago I grew up. Today, kids have a lot more power available. And again, I think the main thing is knowing Christians come from a certain viewpoint, that we have a soul, that we can sin, that humans have, you know, these impressions have something to say about how we view the world. You know, everybody's saying, oh, violent video games, it's just entertainment. Nobody gets hurt from that. Or violent movies, oh, no one gets hurt from that. Or all these morality plays in movies, you know, nobody, doesn't affect the way you think, you know, you're still independent, but you're training yourself. That's what I'm saying.
See, and I don't know. I listened, well, in my day, Kiss.
Yeah.
Alice Cooper, Ozzy Osbourne. I mean, those were the dark bands of the 70s and 80s. I never wanted to go cut somebody up. I mean, I watched Jason and all the horror movies that were popular. Maybe it affected me or influenced me in some way, but I don't see that it had that big of an influence. Maybe it's different now. I mean, maybe watching those type things does have more of an effect than it did then, but I don't know. I'm kind of torn.
Yeah. And, you know, this is where I go back to God, because you can talk about monitoring equipment use. You're not always going to be there as a parent, so you may have additional technology to help you monitor. But God will, here's what I do definitely believe is true. God will reveal what is in the heart of your kids, that what he wants you to know about them. I believe that is true. And it doesn't mean like it's going to happen immediately, but it does mean that it's trusting in God. God, show me what I need to know about my children. But this is not just mentioned for parents. This is like for all of us. We all have relationships. And so I feel like there's a God who can reveal to us, if we pray for that and we're serious about what the nature of our relationships are, how things around us affect us, that's what we have is the Holy Spirit. So this is going back to the Christian worldview. I believe in a God who's everywhere. I don't have to wait for another surveillance camera or another technology to give me information about the world, because we have the Holy Spirit. I believe the Holy Spirit is sufficient for what God wants us to do in this life, period. We don't need technology to accomplish the gospel. God will make it happen. And yet technology can help us. And I would hope we could, you know, show people how to make better use of it. But to engage society, we have to be part of the conversation. We can't just let other people, that other worldviews come in and try to impose a different thing.
All right.
Yeah.
And that was, well, in Ratio Christi, you know, our social media platform is Facebook. I think they may have stepped into Twitter a little bit at this point. That's history. I mean, I'm in West Virginia, and my students, the few that we have, they're like, no, we don't get on Facebook, we don't do Twitter, we do Snapchat. And I'm like, and that was last year, so I don't have any idea. I mean, those that participate, a lot of them don't fool with it at all. I mean, I don't know.
Well, the UGA chapter right now, just to be able to run, they're using a Microsoft technology called GroupMe. It's like a long-running chat, and it's free. And they just use it to share where their meetings are going to be. It's not rich enough for them to share their lives,
Right.
but it is, you know, the beginning of that. And then the chapter also wanted to re-engage the Instagram. So they think that that's going to be useful in terms of sharing information. But John, going to your point, I'm wondering even for myself, are Facebook days numbered? Seriously, I can't even see myself wanting to be interested in it even 5 years out. And I have a lot of, the thing is, it is a way I keep in contact with my family and friends. If I could get them all to go to something else, we probably would leave altogether, because I just don't see it really.
Yeah.
I get so much stuff pushed at me, and your whole news feed is completely constructed. Unless you go into Facebook and choose most recent, you're going to miss things that happen to other people. And where I've been disappointed, number one, was from my friends who were telling people, I got sick, I need prayer, I'm in the hospital. And then other people would know, and then I wouldn't know for like a week or something like that. That's when I get disappointed, because that is something I would like to show. And right now they don't have a way to do that. They try to guess for me about how they think I'm going to use it.
Anytime that you factor in human input, then there's going to be, that's just like the voting situation now. It's all fancy little scanner, touch the name, but then when it comes down to count, then you add the human factor in, you increase the chance of error. And like Facebook is, technology can only go so far.
Right.
So,
guys, I got to get going. But Mark, I enjoyed having you this evening. We appreciate you talking with us.
Sure, and glad to come tonight and talk about this topic.
Yep. All right, you guys have a good evening.
Take care of yourself. Let me know if there's anything you need, Isaac. I'm glad you're feeling better.
Post-COVID.
Yeah, I got to go. Are you going to the meeting, our meeting tonight?
There is a meeting later tonight, I guess, in about an hour.
Yeah, I don't know that I'm going to make that. My mother lives with us now, and she has dementia. So we all have to pitch in.
Mm-hmm.
I live Groundhog Day every day.
Wow.
But anyway, other than that, thank you so much. I really enjoyed it. I mean, I know nothing about it, and that just gave me a taste.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome, and so glad to be here tonight and connect with me. Oh, let's see. I paused my share. I think that's what I needed to do, not to turn this off. I am on Facebook. I'm also on LinkedIn if you want to connect with me.
All right, brother. I appreciate it.
All right. Take care.
Talk to you. See you, Ben.
See ya. Have a good night.
You too.
Thanks.